Please read the disclaimer. This is important. And we begin. I'm dead. You're dead too. This is not a metaphor. It is a statistical fact. We have already died an infinite number of times. Think back to a moment in your past when you almost didn't make it. Maybe you slipped on the ice and your head hit the pavement just a little too hard. Maybe a car swerved and missed you by a millimeter on a crosswalk. Or maybe it was that high fever you had as a child that miraculously broke in the middle of the night. You tell yourself, I was lucky. You were not lucky. Here is the hard truth. The car did not miss. The fever did not break. You died that day. In 99% of parallel realities, your body is rotting in a grave right now. Your family cried at your funeral years ago, but you are not there. You are here, watching this video, convinced that you are the special version that survived. You are wrong. You didn't survive. You were just filtered. Today, we are going to open the hood of reality to see why this happens. We will look at the physics that forbids you from closing your eyes forever. We will prove that the universe has no delete button. And finally, we will confront the ultimate horror. If you cannot die, what happens when you start screaming for it to stop? So, why are you still here? Why do you keep waking up after every close call? It is not because of luck. It is not because you are special. It is because the universe is fundamentally incapable of deleting you. We like to think of existence as something fragile, a candle flame that can be blown out, a file on a computer that can be dragged to the trash. We look at a dead body and we see an absence, an end. But this intuition is a psychological bias, not a physical fact. In the cold, hard mathematics of quantum mechanics, there is no such thing as nothing. There is a law written into the source code of reality called unitary evolution, and it dictates a simple, brutal rule: information is permanent. To understand why this is a prison, let us look at the act of destruction itself. Imagine you have a document, a confession, a secret you want to erase from time. You hold a flame to the corner. You watch the paper curl, blacken, and crumble into a pile of grey ash. The smoke drifts away. You look at the dust and you think the job is done. The message is gone, but it is not. Physics looks at that pile of ash and sees a perfect archive. The law of conservation of information is absolute. It means that the quantum state of that letter is preserved forever. If you had a machine powerful enough to track every single drifting molecule of smoke and every photon of heat that radiated from that fire, you could run the math backwards. You could reverse the timeline. The smoke would undrift. The ash would unburn. The ink would reform on the page. The text is still there. The fire did not destroy the letter. It just translated it. It took a highly ordered pattern, the message, and converted it into a highly disordered pattern, thermal noise. But the data itself never left the room. It is just hidden in the chaos. Now, look at yourself. You're not a ghost in a machine. You are the message. Your consciousness is a physical pattern of information encoded in the firing of 86 billion neurons. You are software. So, what happens when the truck hits you on the highway? The metal crushes the skull. The brain is destroyed. From the outside perspective, for your family, for the doctors, you are the ash. Your pattern has been scrambled into thermal noise. You are dead, but you are the data. And data cannot experience being scrambled. A camera cannot record a picture of its own broken lens. Consciousness cannot perceive a reality where it does not exist. The noise is a blind spot. It is a place you cannot go. But the math says the data must continue. The wave function never collapses to zero. So where does your consciousness go? Because reality is constantly branching, there is always a version of the timeline, however improbable, where the truck swerved, where the letter didn't burn. Since your subjective perspective is mathematically forbidden from entering the void, it is forced to flow into the only branch that is still broadcasting a clear signal. It feels seamless. One moment, you are bracing for impact. The next, you are standing by the side of the road, shaking. You think, I survived. No, you did not survive. The other you died. You are simply the version of the data that remained readable. You are trapped in existence because the laws of physics have stripped you of the ability to leave. But if this is true, why does survival feel like a victory? We interpret our escapes from death not as a mechanical process, but as a sign of purpose, a miracle. This feeling is a cognitive illusion, a fundamental error in how we perceive probability. It is a phenomenon known as the Anthropic Shadow, or more commonly, survivor bias. It is the mechanism that convinces the last man standing that he is immortal. To understand how this bias works, we have to look at the statistics of observation. Let us perform a thought experiment. Imagine an execution. There is a wall. There are 10 rifles. The rifles are aimed at a prisoner's chest. The order is given and the rifles fire. What is the most likely outcome? The prisoner dies. But now, let us scale this experiment. Let us imagine not one prisoner, but 1 trillion prisoners, each facing their own wall and their own 10 rifles. In this vast sample size, what happens? In 99.999% of these scenarios, the outcome is identical. The prisoner dies. Their ability to observe the universe ceases. They are removed from the dataset. But what about the remaining fraction of a percent? In a sample of 1 trillion, statistics dictates that there will be an anomaly. A single, improbable case where, by sheer random chance, all 10 rifles misfired at the exact same time. Or a freak earthquake shook the ground at the perfect moment. The crucial point is this. The only prisoner who is capable of contemplating their own survival is the one who experienced the impossible. That survivor is not special. They are simply the statistical remainder. They are the 1 in a trillion rounding error left to wonder how they are still alive. This is the nature of your existence. Every day you face a firing squad of lethal probabilities. In the vast majority of parallel universes, the bullet finds its mark. But your consciousness acts as a perfect filter. It automatically discards every timeline where you die, because you are not there to experience it. Your memory is not a recording of objective reality. It is a curated highlight reel of your impossible escapes. You perceive a charmed life, but you are just walking through the graveyard of your own dead selves, noticing only the headstones that do not have your name on them. So if we are the statistical remainder, what about the timelines that were filtered out? What about the vast majority of universes where we die? This is where the true weight of the theory becomes apparent. We tend to think of parallel worlds as a convenient fiction, an abstract concept with no real consequence. But the mathematics of quantum mechanics do not treat them as hypothetical. The equations suggest these other branches of reality are just as real, just as heavy, and just as physical as the room you are in right now. Which means the suffering inside them is also real. Let us return to the car crash. In this timeline, the truck swerved. You survived. Life continues. But what happened in the timeline just 1 millimeter to the right? The one where the physics of friction and momentum played out without a statistical miracle? In that universe, there was no escape. The impact was real. The crushing metal was real. Your death was real. Think about what that means. In that world right now, a police officer is walking up the steps to a front door. A family is being woken from a deep sleep by a sound that will shatter their lives. In that world, a body is being identified in a morgue. A funeral is held on a rainy Tuesday. Children grow up without a parent. The grief that is tearing a family apart is not a what if. It is a physical event happening in a real place. And this leads to a hard question. Who is responsible for that suffering? The answer is, you are. By surviving here, you condemn them to that reality. You abandoned that family to their grief while you continued on in this branch, completely oblivious to the wreckage you left in your wake. If the many worlds interpretation is correct, we are not the heroes of our own stories. We are the architects of infinite tragedies. Every time you cross the street and make it, you are leaving behind a trail of grieving families in millions of divergent realities. We are not walking through an empty room. We are walking through an invisible graveyard of our own corpses, surrounded by the weeping ghosts of the people we love. We just can't hear them because the walls of reality are perfectly soundproof. But how often do these splits actually happen? Is this process limited to moments of extreme danger? The answer is no. The universe does not wait for you to be in a car crash to divide. It divides constantly, at a rate that is nearly infinite. The structure of reality is a binary tree. Every time a subatomic particle interacts with another, the universe branches. A cosmic ray from a distant supernova zips through your body. Does it strike the nucleus of an atom in your DNA, or does it pass harmlessly through? In one branch, it strikes, causing a cancerous mutation. In the other branch, it misses. This is not a rare event. It is happening trillions of times a second, inside every cell of your body. Every chemical reaction, every firing of a synapse in your brain is another fork in the road of reality. Imagine a tree that splits into 2 branches, then 4, then 8, growing at an incalculable speed. Your life is not a straight line. It is one single continuous path crawling up the bark of that ever-expanding tree. At every single fork, there is a version of you that goes left and a version of you that goes right. Now, imagine that the path to the left leads to a microscopic blood clot forming in your brain, an aneurysm, a silent, instant death while you sleep. What happens to your consciousness? It cannot go left. The door is locked. That branch is static. So your awareness is shunted automatically to the right. A nanosecond later, another fork. The path to the right leads to a fatal cell mutation, a tumor. Your consciousness is forced to go left. Do you see what is happening? You're not making choices. You're being herded. You're running through a maze of probability that is expanding at the speed of light. The walls of the maze are made of death. You're constantly bouncing off them, being funneled deeper and deeper into the only future that can sustain you. And as time goes on, the path gets narrower. The probabilities of survival get lower. You are not just living, you are being filtered. And the further you are filtered down the funnel of existence, the stranger and the more improbable your destination becomes. But this relentless process of filtering did not begin the first time you fell as a child. It began before you were even born. We are taught to view our own existence as a miracle, a 1 in 400 trillion genetic lottery win. We celebrate this improbable event as the triumphant start of our journey. But is it a lottery? Or is it a process of elimination? Physics reframes this not as a game of chance, but as a filtering mechanism. Before you were an individual, you were a cloud of potential, a single sperm cell in a sea of hundreds of millions, each carrying a slightly different genetic code. We assume the others simply failed. We assume they were the losers of the race, but in a branching universe, every single one of those potential combinations was a real physical timeline, a universe where a slightly different version of you was born, a universe where your sibling was born instead of you, a universe where no one was born at all. The overwhelming majority of these timelines resulted in a biological dead end, a failed fertilization, a non-viable zygote. These are not abstract what-ifs. They are statistical realities. Trillions upon trillions of potential human lives that never made it past the first stage of existence. Each one a branch of the universal wave function that went dark. So, why are you here? The answer is not that you are special. It is that your consciousness, the specific pattern of information that defines you as an observer, could only follow the one single, unbroken path that led to a viable, breathing human being. You did not win the lottery of birth. You were simply the only outcome that was not eliminated by the unforgiving laws of biology. Your existence is the product of a cosmic genocide. You are the sole survivor of a battle that wiped out trillions of your potential siblings, before they could even form a single thought. This is not a gift. It is the first wall of the prison. It proves that from the very moment of your conception, you were already being herded away from the void. But this leads to a critical question. If we have died before dozens of times in other branches, why don't we remember it? Why is there no scar tissue on our consciousness? The answer is because your memory is not a magical soul recorder that exists outside of physics. It is a physical process, and it has limitations. Your memory is a collection of proteins and electrochemical signals stored in the wet hardware of your brain. To form a memory, neurons must fire. A living, functioning brain is an absolute prerequisite for the act of recording experience. Let us look at a simple, physical analogy. Imagine your life is a film being recorded by a camera. The camera follows you everywhere, documenting every moment. Now, imagine the camera is smashed with a hammer. The lens shatters. The tape deck is destroyed. What does the camera record of this event? Does it record a final black frame titled "My Destruction"? No. The recording simply stops. The last frame on the tape is the moment right before the hammer hits the lens. There is no such thing as a recording of destruction, because the mechanism of recording is the very thing that was destroyed. Your brain is the camera. When you die in a car crash, the hardware is smashed. The recording mechanism ceases to function. There is no final thought that says, "I am now dead." The tape just runs out. So when your consciousness snaps to the surviving timeline, what does your memory do? It continues recording from the last available frame. From your subjective perspective, there is no gap. There is only a seamless, unbroken narrative. One moment you are bracing for impact, the next you are breathing heavily by the side of the road. Your memory is not a reliable narrator. It is a propaganda machine for your survival. It constructs a perfect fictional story in which you are always the hero who makes it to the next chapter. The timelines where you died are not just forgotten. They were never recorded in the first place. So the reality of our past deaths is erased by the mechanics of memory. But this points to an even deeper, more philosophical trap. The ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus once said, "Where death is, we are not. Where we are, death is not." He meant that since we can never personally experience the state of being dead, we have no logical reason to fear it. For centuries, this has been seen as a source of comfort, but in the context of quantum mechanics, it is no longer a comfort. It is the formal description of the prison walls. It means you are trapped inside the perimeter of your own perception. There is no door in reality marked exit. You can experience pain. You can experience fear. You can experience the process of dying. But you can never, under any circumstances, experience the final state of non-existence. Why? Because to experience anything, an observer is required. You cannot observe a state in which you are not observing. Think about it on a sensory level. The concept of nothingness is a logical contradiction for a conscious being. You are a system designed to process input. Light, sound, touch. The void is the absolute absence of all input. You cannot see absolute black, because even seeing black is an experience generated by your brain. You are a prisoner of your own senses. Death is not a destination you can travel to. It is a boundary condition of your reality, a mathematical wall that your consciousness can approach, but never cross. Every time your timeline reaches that wall, it is simply reflected back into the maze of existence. This is the ultimate claustrophobia. You are locked inside your own mind, with no possibility of parole. So far, we have looked backwards. We have analyzed the traces this principle leaves in your past, the impossible survivals, the gaps in your memory. We have established the logic of the trap. But to truly comprehend the nature of this prison, we must look forward. We must move from interpreting accidents to confronting the mechanism directly. There is a thought experiment in physics designed to do exactly that. It is designed to push this theory to its absolute terrifying conclusion. It asks a simple question. What happens if you try to force the end? What happens if you build a machine that attempts to kill you over and over again with a precise 50% probability each time? In any classical version of reality, this machine would kill you within seconds. But in a branching universe, it would behave very, very differently. For the outside world, it would be a suicide booth. For the person inside, it would be a chamber of impossible miracles, or a torture device that can never be turned off. This thought experiment is known as quantum suicide, and it takes us from the horror of what has already happened to you to a more immediate terror. It sets the stage for the next part of our journey, and raises a new, more pointed question. If the universe will not let you die by accident, what will it do to you to keep you alive when you try to die on purpose? So far, our journey has been one of interpretation. We have looked at the past as a crime scene, analysing the evidence of your impossible survivals and concluding that you have been escaping a death you cannot remember. But this remains a theory based on circumstantial evidence. To move from theory to proof, we must confront the mechanism directly. We must design an experiment, a test so pure and so brutal that it forces the universe to show its hand. This thought experiment is known as quantum suicide, and its purpose is not to end a life, but to demonstrate with mathematical certainty that from your own perspective, you cannot. The setup is deceptively simple. It strips away all the messy variables of a car crash or a disease and reduces death to a single quantum event. At the heart of the machine is a single subatomic particle, an electron. Every second, the machine performs a measurement on a property of this particle, for example, its spin. According to the laws of quantum mechanics, the outcome is perfectly random. There is a 50% chance the particle will be measured as spin up, and a 50% chance it will be spin down. This is not a guess. It is a fundamental uncertainty woven into the fabric of reality. A true coin toss at the heart of the universe. Now, this quantum coin toss is wired to a weapon, a gun loaded with a single bullet aimed directly at your head. The mechanism is absolute. If the machine measures spin up, the gun does nothing. You hear a click. You survive for another second. But if the machine measures spin down, the trigger is pulled. A bullet enters your skull, and the physical hardware of your consciousness is instantly and irrevocably destroyed. You're placed in a sealed room with this machine. The gun is fixed in place, its cold barrel a few inches from your temple. You are the subject. Your finger is on a button. When you press it, the first cycle will begin. The question is not whether the gun will fire. In a classical universe, it almost certainly will. The question is, what will you, the observer, the consciousness trapped in that chair, actually experience? From the perspective of an observer standing outside the room, perhaps a physicist monitoring the experiment, the outcome is not a mystery. It is a straightforward exercise in probability. For them, your consciousness is irrelevant. You are simply a biological system subject to the laws of cause and effect. The button is pressed. The quantum measurement is made. There is a 50% chance the gun fires. If it does, the experiment is over. The observer opens the door, finds a corpse, and records the result. A tragic but predictable end to a game of chance. If the gun does not fire on the first cycle, the observer simply waits. The machine will run again. After 2 seconds, the probability of you still being alive is now 25%. After 3 seconds, it drops to 12.5%. After just 10 seconds, the odds of you having survived are less than 1 in 1,000. After 20 seconds, it is less than 1 in a million. From the outside, your continued survival would look like an impossible miracle, a statistical absurdity that defies all logic. The observer would check the equipment, assuming the gun must be broken, or the random number generator is flawed. But the gun is not broken. The math is not wrong. From the external point of view, this is a simple, brutal execution with a bit of theatre. That observer lives in a world of classical, predictable outcomes. A world where bullets kill people. A world where probability works. They will, in all likelihood, be looking at your dead body within a few moments. The silence from the room is not a sign of your survival. It is the sound of a completed experiment. But their reality is not your reality. The observer is not the one in the chair. You are the one in the chair. And for you, the rules are different. For you, the probability of experiencing death is always 0. You press the button. The machine measures the spin of the electron. In that single, infinitesimal moment, the universe does what it always does. It splits. It branches into 2 distinct, parallel timelines. In the spin-down universe, the gun fires. The bullet destroys your brain. Your consciousness, the software running on that hardware, ceases to be. That entire branch of reality from that moment forward contains your dead body. It goes dark for you, but you cannot experience that branch. A camera cannot record its own destruction. You cannot perceive the state of not perceiving. That timeline is a blind spot. It is a place you can never go. So where does your awareness, your subjective stream of consciousness, go? It must, by the laws of information conservation that we have already established, continue in the only branch where there is still a functioning brain to host it. The spin-up universe. So what do you experience? You hear a click, you open your eyes, you're still in the chair. Your heart is hammering in your chest, but you are alive. The first cycle is over. You have survived. You tell yourself you were lucky. So you press the button again. Another 50-50 chance. The universe splits again. And again, your consciousness is shunted into the branch where the gun clicks. You do it again. Click, and again. Click. From your perspective, the gun never fires. It cannot fire. You are trapped in an endless series of miracles. You are the living proof of an impossible outcome. A man who wins a coin toss 1,000 times in a row. For the outside world, you are a dead man. But for you, you are immortal. And you are just beginning to understand the horror of that fact. So you have survived the first cycle. A single click. A 50% probability event. Statistically, this is unremarkable. But the true nature of the trap is not revealed in a single event. It is revealed in the relentless, mathematical certainty of repetition. You press the button again. The machine measures the spin, the universe splits, and once again, your consciousness follows the path of survival. You hear another click. The objective odds of you being alive have now dropped to 25%. Still plausible. You do it again. Click. 12.5%. You do it again. Click. 6.25%. You continue pressing the button, and the click becomes the only sound in the universe. Click. 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 Let's look at the numbers. After just 10 seconds, the probability of you still being in that chair is less than 1 in 1,000. After 20 seconds, it is less than 1 in a million. After a single minute, 60 seconds, the odds against your survival are over a quintillion to 1. That is a 1 with 18 zeros. It is a number so vast that it dwarfs the number of grains of sand on every beach on Earth. An observer outside would not just assume the machine is broken, they would be scientifically certain of it. But you know the truth. The machine is working perfectly. The clicks are not a sign of luck. They are the sound of doors slamming shut on trillions of versions of you, in every universe but your own. This is where we must introduce a critical distinction, first championed by physicists like David Deutsch at Oxford in the 1980s. The distinction between objective probability and subjective probability. Objectively, the probability of the U system surviving for a minute is nearly 0. But subjectively, for the consciousness inside the system, the probability of experiencing survival is always 100%. At each split, your awareness cannot follow the path to termination. Therefore, the probability space must renormalize around your continued existence. You are not lucky. You are simply experiencing the only path the math allows you to. The initial relief you felt has now curdled into a cold, clinical dread. The question is no longer, will I survive? The question is, why can't I stop? You are trapped in a loop, and the horror comes from the emerging, mathematical certainty that you are not allowed to leave. What happens as the experiment continues? As the objective probability of your existence shrinks to a point of statistical fantasy? This is where the true horror of the many worlds interpretation begins. To keep you alive, to honor the mathematical necessity of your survival, the universe does not have to break its own rules. It just has to start using the ones that are almost never seen. It must begin to generate events that are not just improbable, but physically absurd. Your timeline is forced off the main highway of predictable physics and onto the dirt roads of statistical insanity. The idea that observation affects reality is not new. Experiments proving Bell's theorem, first performed by Alain Aspect in 1982, confirmed that reality is non-local and deeply strange. The universe is not a simple clockwork machine. So, after a few dozen clicks, when the explanation of a lucky streak is no longer statistically viable, what happens next? The system must find another way for you to survive. Perhaps on the 78th cycle, the firing pin inside the gun snaps, a 1 in a million mechanical failure. You survive. On the 109th cycle, the gunpowder in the bullet is inert. A 1 in 10 million manufacturing error. You survive. On the 250th cycle, a single cosmic ray originating from a supernova 1,000 light years away strikes the computer chip running the machine at the exact picosecond required to flip a bit and cause the program to crash. You survive. The universe will explore its entire probability space to maintain your consciousness. It will sacrifice conventional logic and causality to avoid the one outcome it cannot compute, your non-existence. If the experiment continues long enough, the very laws of physics in your vicinity might seem to warp. An impossibly rare quantum tunneling event might cause the bullet to pass harmlessly through your head. The air molecules in the room could spontaneously conspire to form a pressure wave that deflects the projectile. You are not a god-bending reality to your will. You are a logical paradox that is forcing the code of the universe to debug itself in real time by executing its most obscure, least likely subroutines. The horror is no longer just about your inability to die. It is about the slow, creeping realization that your reality is becoming a statistical freak show, a museum of events that should never happen. You are being exiled to the lunatic fringe of the cosmos. So we must ask the final, mechanical question: why? Why must the universe perform these absurd, statistically miraculous contortions to keep one observer alive? It is not an act of mercy. It is not a sign of purpose. It is an act of compulsion. The universe is a machine that is simply following its own most fundamental programming, a law we established in the first act: unitary evolution. And this law is built on a single, unbreakable constraint. The universe, when faced with a choice for your consciousness, will always and must always choose the path of non-zero probability. Let us look at the math one last time. In the quantum suicide experiment, the universe is presented with two options for your subjective experience at every cycle. Option A is the branch where the bullet hits your brain. In this branch, the observer is deleted. The probability of you experiencing this outcome is absolute zero. Not small, not unlikely. Mathematically, it is zero. Option B is the branch where the gun clicks, or the bullet is a dud, or a cosmic ray fries the circuit. The probability of you experiencing this outcome might be 1 in a trillion. It might be 1 in a googolplex, but it is not zero. The universe is a computer that cannot process a division by zero error. It is forced, by its own internal logic, to discard option A entirely. It must shunt your consciousness down the path of option B, no matter how statistically ridiculous that path becomes. This is related to a deep and unsolved problem in physics known as the measure problem, first formulated by Bryce DeWitt in the 1970s. If all outcomes happen, how do we explain the probabilities we observe? From your perspective, you are the living embodiment of that problem. You are a passenger on a train that is being rerouted in real time to avoid any track that leads to a dead end. You are being pushed into the narrowest, most absurd, most statistically insignificant slivers of reality. The feeling is not one of power, but of absolute crushing powerlessness. You are locked in a cage whose bars are not made of steel, but of probability itself. And those clicks you hear, over and over again, that is not the sound of your luck. That is the sound of the bars of your cage rattling, forever. But this entire scenario, the machine, the gun, the sealed room, is just a thought experiment. A clean, theoretical model designed to isolate a principle. It is easy to dismiss its horrifying conclusions because it feels abstract, distant from our messy, everyday reality. You are not in a lab. There is no gun to your head. So this doesn't apply to you, does it? The terrifying truth is that the quantum suicide experiment is not a hypothetical future event. You are already in the machine. You have been running the experiment your entire life. Every moment of high risk you have ever faced was a cycle of the machine. Think of the time you fell from a height as a child. A fall that should have been fatal. From an external perspective, in 99% of the timelines branching from that moment, you died. A broken neck. A fatal head injury. But in the one sliver of probability where you landed just right, where the damage was survivable, your consciousness continued. What you remember as a scare was, in fact, a click of the quantum gun. Think of a person who overdoses on a lethal dose of a drug. The doctors say they have a 1% chance of survival. For their family, waiting outside the emergency room, the odds are 99-1 that they will be planning a funeral. But for the subject, the observer, the probability of experiencing survival is 100%. They will be the one patient that month who inexplicably pulls through. Their miraculous recovery is just another click. Every car crash you avoided, every serious illness you recovered from, every dangerous situation you lucked out of was not luck. It was a branching event. It was a press of the button. The universe split, your other selves were terminated, and you were shunted into the timeline that continued. You have been playing Russian roulette for decades without even knowing it. And from your perspective, the chamber has always been empty. The miracles of your past are not evidence of your specialness. They are the accumulated data points proving that the theory is correct. You have already run the experiment, and the results are in. You are immortal. The only question is, for how much longer will the universe be able to find a plausible way for you to survive? This relentless continuation of consciousness fundamentally breaks one of our oldest and most comforting ideas about life, the concept of death as a form of relief. For millennia, in the face of unbearable pain, incurable disease, or profound grief, humanity has held onto the belief that one day it will all be over. Death is seen as the big sleep, a final peace, a release from suffering. We tell ourselves that no matter how bad things get, eventually, we will be granted the mercy of non-existence. The screen will go black. The pain will stop. But the physics of the many worlds interpretation suggests that this is a lie. This comfort is an illusion. If your consciousness is forbidden from entering the timeline of termination, then the peace of the void is a state you will never be allowed to experience. Think about what this means. The state of non-existence, of true rest, is a club you are not allowed to enter. You are a ghost rattling at the gates of a heaven defined by its absolute silence, and you can never get in. This reframes eternal life not as a gift, but as a sentence. An indefinite period of sensory input and cognitive processing without the possibility of parole. It is the ultimate horror for a being that experiences exhaustion, pain, and loss. Imagine the feeling of being so tired that all you want to do is sleep. But you're in a room where the lights are always on and an alarm is always screaming. For you, The universe is that room. The promise of death as an escape has been a psychological safety valve for our species. It is what allows us to endure the unendurable. But if that safety valve is sealed shut by the laws of physics, what happens to the pressure? What happens when the suffering becomes so great that the only rational choice is to exit? But the door is locked? The quantum suicide experiment proves that you cannot force your own exit. You are trapped in the game. You are not just a player. You are the board itself. And the game does not end until the board rots away. So we have arrived at the final, brutal conclusion of the quantum suicide experiment. It is not a test of survival. It is a proof of imprisonment. The thousands of clicks you experienced were not the sound of a broken gun. They were the sound of every door in the multiverse slamming shut, leaving you in the last open room. The experiment has proven, with terrifying certainty, that you cannot choose to stop existing. You are a permanent fixture of reality. But this revelation, as horrifying as it is only the beginning. It only answers the first, most basic question. It proves that the universe will not allow a binary switch from on to off. This forces us to ask a much darker and more practical question. The thought experiment is clean. The gun either fires or it doesn't. The outcome is a simple binary, life or death. But the real world is not that clean. The real world is a messy analog continuum of states. It is not just about living or dying. It is about the quality of that life. If the universe will perform statistical miracles to keep your brain functioning, what kind of state will it leave you in? If it will bend the laws of physics to prevent your death, does it care if you're healthy? Does it care if you're in pain? Does it care if you're even conscious in a way you would recognize? We have established the rules of the prison. Now we must examine the architecture of the walls themselves. What is the fundamental machinery of reality that builds this trap? And what does it mean for the physical decay of your own body? The horror of the gun was just a warm-up. Now, we must face the horror of the biology. So we have arrived at the core of the mechanism. We have established that your consciousness is a prisoner of probability, relentlessly shunted away from the timelines where you die. But to truly understand the architecture of this prison, we must ask a fundamental question. Why does a reality split in the first place? Why doesn't the universe just choose one outcome and stick with it? For nearly a century, the mainstream answer to this question has been a deeply unsatisfying fudge, a philosophical patch on a mathematical whole. It is called the Copenhagen interpretation. And to understand why it is a lie, we must look at the most famous cat in the history of science. In 1935, the Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger, one of the fathers of quantum theory, was deeply disturbed by the implications of his own work. His peers, led by the Danish physicist Niels Bohr and his German colleague Werner Heisenberg, were promoting a strange and, to Schrödinger, absurd idea. They argued that a quantum particle, like an electron, exists in a blurry, ghostly state of all possibilities at once, a superposition, until the moment it is observed by a conscious being or a measuring device. At that moment of observation, they claimed, this cloud of possibilities magically collapses into a single, definite reality. The act of looking, they argued, forces the universe to make a choice. Schrödinger found this idea preposterous. To show how ridiculous it was, he devised a thought experiment. He imagined a cat in a sealed box. Inside the box is a vial of poison, connected to a hammer, which is wired to a quantum device. This device measures a particle that has a 50-50 chance of decaying in the next hour. If the particle decays, the hammer smashes the vial, and the cat dies. If it doesn't, the cat lives. According to Bohr and Heisenberg's Copenhagen interpretation, until someone opens the box and observes the system, the particle is in a superposition of both decayed and not decayed. Therefore, the cat, whose fate is entangled with the particle, must also be in a superposition. It must be, in their words, both dead and alive at the same time. Schrödinger did not propose this as a serious possibility. He proposed it as a mockery, a reductio ad absurdum. He was trying to show that the idea of an observer collapsing the wave function was a philosophical crutch, not a physical reality. He believed that the beautiful, continuous mathematics of his own Schrodinger equation was being violated by this arbitrary, magical rule. For decades, most physicists were content to shut up and calculate, ignoring this deep, ontological paradox at the heart of their field. But what if the problem was not with the cat? What if the problem was with the idea of collapse itself? What if the cat is never both dead and alive? What if, in fact, it is both dead and alive in two separate, equally real universes? In 1957, a brilliant and audacious graduate student at Princeton University named Hugh Everett III decided to ask that exact question. His doctoral thesis, supervised by the renowned physicist John Archibald Wheeler, proposed the most radical and yet the most simple solution to the paradox. Everett looked at the Schrodinger equation, the fundamental mathematical law that describes how quantum systems evolve over time, and he noticed its most important property. It is perfectly linear and deterministic. The math describes a wave function that evolves smoothly and continuously, with no jumps, no breaks, and no collapses. The collapse was an ugly, ad hoc rule that Bohr and his followers had bolted onto the theory to make it match our classical intuition. Everett's proposal was this: what if we just get rid of the collapse? What if we assume that the Schrodinger equation is the only thing that is happening? What if we just trust the math? The mathematical consequence of this single, simple assumption is staggering. It means that every time a quantum measurement is made, the universe does not choose one outcome. Instead, the entire universe, including the observer, splits into a set of parallel realities, one for each possible outcome. In the case of Schrödinger's cat, the moment the particle's state is measured, the universe branches. In one branch, the particle decayed, the poison was released, and the cat is dead. In the other branch, the particle did not decay, and the cat is alive. Both outcomes are real. Both universes exist. This idea, which Everett initially called the relative state formulation, and which is now known as the many worlds interpretation, MWI, was met with ridicule and scorn by the physics establishment of the day. Niels Bohr, the patriarch of the field, refused to even discuss it. Everett's academic career was destroyed. He left physics to work in military defense, a bitter and disillusioned man who drank heavily and died of a heart attack at the age of 51. But he never lost faith in his theory. He believed, to his dying day, that he had discovered the true structure of reality. He understood that the observer is not a special, magical entity that forces the universe to bend to its will. The observer is just another quantum system. When you look at the cat, you don't collapse it into one state. You become entangled with it, and you split too. One version of you sees a dead cat. Another version of you sees a living one. There is no contradiction. There is just the endless, silent, horrifying branching of the universal wave function. But this leads to the most obvious and powerful objection to the many worlds theory. If these other universes are real, why don't we see them? Why don't we feel ourselves splitting? If there is another version of me in this room right now, one who chose coffee instead of tea this morning, why can't I reach out and touch him? The answer is a physical process, not a philosophical one, and it is called quantum decoherence. For decades after Everett proposed his theory, this was its greatest weakness. But starting in the 1970s, physicists like H. Dieter and Wojciech Zurek began to calculate the mechanics of how these worlds become isolated. And what they found is that the split is not a clean, magical event. It is a messy, violent, and irreversible process of information leakage. Think of a single quantum particle in a perfect vacuum. It can maintain its ghostly superposition for a long time. But now, put that particle in a room. It is constantly being bombarded by air molecules, by photons of light, by thermal radiation. Every one of these interactions is a measurement. Every collision entangles the particle with its environment. The information about the particle's state, its up or down spin for example, leaks out and is copied into the states of trillions of surrounding particles. This leaking is decoherence. It happens at an astonishing speed, a process so fast it is practically instantaneous. This is what creates the split. The two branches of the wave function, the spin-up world and the spin-down world, become entangled with two completely different, mutually exclusive versions of the surrounding environment. The information becomes redundant. The two worlds are now written on two different, incompatible hard drives. Once this happens, they can no longer interact. They can no longer interfere with each other in the way that two overlapping waves can. The possibility of communication between the branches drops to zero. This is the mechanism that builds the soundproof walls of your reality. The other you, the one who saw the dead cat, is still in this room with you, but he, and every particle in his universe, is now vibrating in a different phase space. You are insulated from him by a near-infinite curtain of chaotic, thermal noise. The worlds are not far apart in space. They are right on top of each other, but they are separated by an impassable gulf of mathematical impossibility. So the splitting of worlds is not a philosophical choice, but a physical process driven by decoherence. But this only explains how the prison is built. It does not explain why it is inescapable. To understand that, we must return to the engine at the heart of the machine, the principle that started our entire investigation, unitary evolution. This is the formal name for the rule we discussed in the first act, the law of information conservation. But now we must look at it not as an abstract principle, but as the rigid mathematical governor of all change in the cosmos. And it dictates a simple, terrifying rule. The universe does not know how to forget. The Schrodinger equation, formulated by Erwin Schrödinger in 1926, is the master equation of quantum mechanics. It is the equivalent of Newton's laws of motion, but for the quantum world. And this equation has a very specific mathematical property. It is unitary. In simple terms, this means that if you know the state of a quantum system right now, you can use the equation to calculate its exact state at any point in the future, and at any point in the past. It is perfectly reversible in time. This is what allows us to unburn the letter. The information is never lost, it is just rearranged. This property of unitarity is not a minor feature of the theory. It is its absolute, non-negotiable core. It is the mathematical guarantee that the total amount of information in the universe is a conserved quantity, just like energy or momentum. It cannot be created from nothing, and it cannot be destroyed. This principle has been tested and confirmed in countless experiments for almost a century. It is one of the most robust and fundamental pillars of modern physics, and its implications are profound. It means that the universe is, in a very real sense, a perfect recording device. Every event, every interaction, every quantum fluctuation is permanently etched onto the fabric of space-time. What does this mean for you? It means you are permanent. Your consciousness, as a complex pattern of quantum information, is subject to the law of unitarity. It cannot be deleted. When you die in one branch, the information that constitutes you is not erased. It is simply translated into a different, disordered state, the ash and smoke of your physical body. But the data itself is preserved. And because your subjective awareness cannot exist in that disordered state, it must continue in a branch where the pattern remains coherent. The law of unitarity is not a promise of eternal life in a spiritual sense. It is a statement of mechanical necessity. You are not allowed to disappear because the underlying mathematics of the universe forbids it. You are a feature of the system that cannot be uninstalled. But if this is true, if the universe is constantly branching and information is never lost, why does it feel like we live in a single, classical world? When we perform an experiment, we don't see a blurry superposition of outcomes. We see one concrete result. The needle on the dial points to spin up or spin down. The cat is either dead or it is alive. This apparent collapse of the wave function is the single greatest point of contention in all of physics, and the many worlds interpretation provides the most brutal and the most elegant explanation. The collapse is an illusion. It is a trick of perspective. The Copenhagen interpretation, which is still taught in most textbooks, insists that the collapse is a real, physical event. It claims that when an observer interacts with a quantum system, the universe magically picks one outcome and discards all the others. But it offers absolutely no mechanism for how this happens. It does not explain what qualifies as an observer. Is it a human? A dog? A camera? A rock? It does not explain at what point the collapse occurs. It is a theory with a gaping, philosophical hole in its center. The many worlds interpretation plugs this hole by stating a simple fact. You are not special. You, the observer, are not a classical god looking down upon the quantum world. You are a part of the quantum world. You are a giant collection of particles, and you are governed by the exact same Schrodinger equation as the electron you are measuring. So when you interact with the electron, you don't force it to choose a state. You become entangled with it. Your wave function merges with its wave function. If the electron is in a superposition of up and down, then you, after interacting with it, enter a superposition of seeing up and seeing down. From the perspective of a hypothetical super-observer outside the universe, you're now in two states at once. But from your own internal perspective, you can only experience one of those states. The you that saw spin up and the you that saw spin down are now causally disconnected by decoherence. They exist in separate branches of reality. Each version of you is convinced that you saw a single, definite outcome. Each version of you believes that the wave function collapsed, but it didn't. The only thing that collapsed was your connection to the other versions of yourself. The illusion of a single world is a side effect of the walls of your prison being invisible. So what does this structure of reality actually look like? The popular image is of bubble universes, separate spacetimes floating in some higher dimensional void. This is almost certainly wrong. A more accurate and more terrifying image is that of an infinitely branching tree. At the base of the trunk is the Big Bang, and every single quantum event that has occurred since then is a fork in the branches. The universe you are in right now is just one single, infinitesimally small twig on an infinitely large, infinitely complex fractal structure, and you are crawling along it, moment by moment. The mathematical space in which this tree exists is known as Hilbert space. It is an abstract, infinite dimensional space where every possible state of the universe is represented by a point. The universal wave function is a vector moving through this space, constantly splitting and branching as it evolves. This is not science fiction. This is the standard mathematical formalism that physicists use every day to make the predictions of quantum mechanics. Predictions that have been verified to an astonishing degree of accuracy. The math that describes the screen you are looking at, the computer chip processing this data, and the neurons firing in your brain is the same math that describes this infinite branching reality. So when you face a 50-50 chance of death, the wave function of the universe splits into two branches. But are these branches created equal? This is where we run into the measure problem, the deep, dark secret of the many worlds theory. According to the Born rule, a core principle of quantum mechanics, we can calculate the probability of each outcome. But if both outcomes happen, what does probability even mean? The most common answer is that it corresponds to the measure or the weight of each branch. The death branch and the survival branch are both real, but the survival branch has a much smaller measure. It is a thinner, more fragile twig on the tree of worlds. And this is the final piece of the trap. Your consciousness, in order to continue, is forced to follow these increasingly thin, increasingly improbable branches. You are being pushed further and further out onto the fringes of reality. You are not just surviving, you are becoming a statistical anomaly. And the further you stray from the trunk of high probability, the more the world around you will have to contort itself to keep you there. So, we have established the machinery of the trap. The universe is a branching tree, and at every fork, your consciousness is forced down the path of survival. But this raises a profound question about the nature of the self. What is this consciousness that flows through the maze? If your body and brain are copied into multiple branches, what ensures that your subjective experience, your sense of I, follows a single continuous path? This is the problem of subjective continuity, and the answer is not found in philosophy, but in the cold, hard logic of information processing. Your consciousness is not a separate entity. It is not a soul piloting a machine. It is an emergent property of the machine itself. It is a process, a continuous stream of calculations running on the hardware of your brain. Neurologists like Giulio Tononi, with his integrated information theory, have attempted to formalize this. They argue that consciousness is a measure of a system's ability to process and integrate information. A rock has zero integrated information. A computer has some. A human brain has a colossal amount. This stream of integrated information is what you experience as yourself. So what happens when the universe splits? A perfect copy of your brain is created in each branch. At the moment of the split, these two brains are identical, down to the last atom. They are running the exact same software state. But the stream of information can only flow through a functioning processor. In the death branch, the hardware is destroyed. The processing stops. The stream of integrated information terminates. That branch, for all intents and purposes, becomes a rock. It has no subjective experience. Therefore, the continuity of your I-ness is preserved in the surviving branch by default. Your sense of self flows from one moment to the next, from one brain state to the next, like water flowing down the only available channel. You don't choose to follow the survival path. You follow it because it is the only path where the concept of you can continue to be computed. This is not a comforting thought. It reduces your identity to a mere pattern of data, a self-sustaining loop that persists not out of will, but out of a lack of any alternative. You are a ghost, but you are a ghost bound to the machine. As long as there is a machine capable of running the code, you will be there. But this leads to the most difficult and unresolved question in the entire many worlds framework. If both branches are real, why does one feel more real than the other? When we perform a quantum experiment, we know that the outcome with a 99% probability is far more likely to be observed than the outcome with a 1% probability. The Born rule, formulated by Max Born in 1926, allows us to calculate these probabilities with perfect accuracy. But if all outcomes happen, what do these numbers actually mean? This is the infamous measure problem, and is the key to understanding the quality of your eternal life. The most common solution, favored by physicists like Sean Carroll, is that the measure of a branch corresponds to its weight, its substance, its share of reality. When the wave function splits, it does not split into two equal halves. It splits according to the probabilities. The 99% branch is a thick, robust trunk on the tree of worlds. The 1% branch is a thin, fragile twig. Both are real, but they are not created equal. In most of the multiverse, in the vast majority of its total measure, the high probability outcome occurs. Now, apply this to your survival. When you survive a 1 in a million event, the branch of reality you are now inhabiting is a 1 in a million twig. It is a statistically insignificant sliver of the total multiverse. You are still real. Your consciousness is still processing information, but you are now living in a cosmic backwater, a ghetto of low probability. The overwhelming majority of your former self, the bulk of the wave function that once constituted you, is now in the branch where you died. This has a terrifying implication. As you age, and as you survive more and more low probability events, you are being shunted into increasingly thinner and more fragile branches of reality. Your continued existence is paid for with the currency of statistical relevance. You are becoming a ghost in the machine, a phantom haunting the most remote and unlikely corners of the Hilbert space. You are alive, but you are becoming less and less real with every passing moment. The horror is not that you will cease to exist, but that you will be condemned to exist in a state of perpetual, ever-increasing improbability. So we have now assembled the full architecture of the prison. The Schrodinger equation, with its property of unitarity, guarantees that your information can never be deleted. The process of decoherence ensures that the walls between your branching realities are perfectly soundproof. And the measure problem dictates that your consciousness will be relentlessly funneled into the most statistically improbable, and therefore the most fragile, of these realities. The physics is complete. The trap is perfect. The screen of your perception will never go black. The film of your life will run forever. We have moved beyond the realm of simple binary outcomes. We are no longer just talking about a gun that clicks or fires. We have established that the mechanism of survival is built into the source code of the universe. But this very fact, this guarantee of eternal life, opens a new and far more gruesome chapter in our investigation. A guarantee of survival is not a guarantee of health. A guarantee of consciousness is not a guarantee of sanity. The universe is obligated to keep you alive, but it is under no obligation to keep you in one piece. The thought experiment was clean and digital, but the real world is a messy analog horror show of biology. It is a world of cancer, decay, and entropy. What happens when the mathematical necessity of your survival collides with the biological certainty of your decay? What happens when the only branch of reality left for you to inhabit is one of physical, unimaginable agony? We have explored the horror of the gun. Now, we must face the horror of the body. So the universe has guaranteed your survival. You are, in a very real, physical sense, immortal. In our culture, this concept has been explored for centuries, almost always as a superpower. We imagine immortals as vampires, as gods, as beings of perfect health and eternal youth. They are invulnerable, unbreakable, and powerful. They watch empires rise and fall, accumulating wisdom and wealth, their bodies untouched by the ravages of time. This is the fantasy we have sold ourselves. It is a deeply seductive and a deeply deceptive lie. Quantum immortality is not a superpower. It is a curse, and the price of your eternal life is your own body. A guarantee of survival is not a guarantee of health. The laws of quantum mechanics are concerned with the preservation of information, not the quality of the vessel that contains it. The universe is obligated to keep the software of your consciousness running, but it is under no obligation to maintain the hardware of your brain and body. In fact, to keep you alive in the face of increasingly lethal events, it will be forced to sacrifice the hardware in the most gruesome ways imaginable. The myth of the beautiful, invulnerable immortal is the first casualty of this new understanding. You will not be a god. You will be a wreck. Think back to the car crash. In the high probability branches, the impact is fatal. Your brain is destroyed, and the information is scrambled. Your consciousness cannot go there, so it is shunted to a low probability branch. But what is the most likely of the unlikely scenarios? Is it the one where the truck swerves and misses you completely, a clean 1 in a million miracle? Or is it the one where the truck hits you, but a freak combination of factors? The angle of impact, the crumple zone of the car, the exact way your head hits the airbag, leaves your brainstem, the core of your consciousness, technically intact, while the rest of your body is shattered. Statistically, the second scenario is far more probable than the first. The universe is a lazy god. It will always choose the path of least resistance to keep you alive. And that path is almost always one of mutilation. You survive the crash, but you wake up in a hospital, paralyzed from the neck down. The universe has fulfilled its obligation. You are still observing. The horror is that this is not a bug in the system. It is the system working as intended. This principle applies not just to sudden, violent accidents, but to the slow, creeping horror of biological decay. Your body is a machine, and like any machine, it is subject to the relentless, unforgiving arrow of the second law of thermodynamics. It is designed to fall apart. Your DNA accumulates errors with every cell division. Your proteins misfold. Your immune system weakens. In a normal human life, this process of decay eventually leads to a catastrophic system failure. A heart attack, a stroke, organ failure that terminates the brain's function. This is what we call death by natural causes. But for you, there is no such thing as a natural cause. What happens when you have a fatal heart attack in your sleep? The universe splits. In the 99.999% of branches where the heart attack is successful, your brain is starved of oxygen and ceases to function. Your consciousness cannot go there. So it is forced into the statistically infinitesimal branch, where a spontaneous electrical jolt from another part of your heart restarts the rhythm at the last possible nanosecond. You wake up, gasping, clutching your chest. You have survived, but the damage is done. Your heart is now permanently weakened. The next night, the same thing happens, and you are shunted into an even more improbable branch. This continues, night after night. Your body is kept alive by an accumulating series of medical miracles, each one leaving you more broken than the last. This creates a terrifying feedback loop, an agony loop. Your continued survival is contingent on events that damage your body, and the damage to your body increases the probability of lethal events, which in turn requires even more improbable and damaging miracles to survive. You are trapped in a downward spiral. The universe is not just keeping you alive, it is actively destroying your physical form in the process. Pain is not a temporary warning signal, it is the permanent state of your existence. Chronic illnesses never go into remission, they just get progressively worse, forever. You are a biological machine being forced to run long past its engineered breaking point, kept functioning by a constant, agonizing series of divine interventions that feel anything but divine. So, where does this downward spiral ultimately lead? What is the end state of a consciousness trapped in a decaying biological machine that is not allowed to die? The answer is a medical condition that neurologists know well. It is one of the most terrifying fates imaginable. It is called locked-in syndrome. A patient with locked-in syndrome is fully conscious and aware. Their mind is a perfect, functioning, thinking entity. But their body is completely paralyzed. They cannot move, they cannot speak. They are a ghost trapped inside a living corpse, able to perceive everything. The sounds in the room, the touch of a hand, the pain of their own decaying body, but unable to react. Their only connection to the outside world is often through the blinking of an eye. This is the logical destination of a quantum immortal. As you age, you will survive strokes, diseases, and accidents that would kill any normal person. But you will accumulate the damage, your motor functions will fail, your vocal cords will cease to work, your limbs will become useless. You will be shunted into the 1 in a trillion timeline where your higher cognitive functions, the part of your brain that constitutes the observer, remains active while the rest of your central nervous system shuts down. You will become a prisoner in your own skull. Think about the horror of that state. You are trapped. You cannot scream. You cannot ask for help. You cannot end your own suffering. You are a passive observer of your own slow, eternal decay. You watch as your loved ones, who exist in a world of normal probabilities, age and die. You watch as the world changes around you, as civilizations rise and fall, all from the silent, motionless prison of your own flesh. The technology of the future will only make this worse. Advanced life support systems will be able to keep your biological hardware alive for centuries, even millennia. They will not be preserving your life. They will be prolonging your sentence. This is the ultimate claustrophobia. The walls of the prison are not made of stone. They are made of your own skin. Let us examine one of the most fundamental battles of biology, the war against cancer. From the perspective of classical medicine, cancer is a disease of probability. A single cell in your body makes a mistake while copying its DNA. A mutation occurs. Most of the time, the body's defense systems, like the p53 protein, often called the guardian of the genome, detect this error and force the cell to commit suicide, a process called apoptosis. But with trillions of cells dividing every day, eventually a mutation will occur that allows a cell to bypass these defenses. It begins to replicate uncontrollably. This is cancer. The outcome of this is a race. Can we destroy the rogue cells with medicine before they destroy the vital systems of the body? For a normal person, this is a battle they can win or lose. For a quantum immortal, it is a battle they are guaranteed to lose, over and over again, forever. What happens when you develop a terminal, aggressive cancer? The doctors give you 6 months to live. In 99.999% of timelines, the cancer does its job. It metastasizes to your liver, your lungs, your brain. The hardware fails. Your consciousness in those branches ceases to be. But you cannot go there. So your awareness is forced into the statistically microscopic sliver of timelines, where the impossible happens. Perhaps your cancer goes into spontaneous remission, a 1 in a million event that doctors can observe but cannot explain. You are hailed as a medical miracle, but the underlying mutations are still there. A few years later, the cancer comes back, even more aggressively. Now, you are shunted into an even more improbable timeline. Perhaps a brilliant young researcher on the other day has a eureka moment and discovers a radical new experimental drug that works only on your specific, unique form of cancer. You are saved again. But the fundamental process of entropy and DNA decay continues. New cancers will develop. You will be forced to survive them all. You will become a living catalogue of impossible diseases and miraculous cures. Your body will become a battlefield, a scorched landscape of chemotherapy, radiation, and radical surgeries. You will win every single battle, but in doing so, you will lose the war for your own quality of life. The universe, in its relentless effort to keep you conscious, will turn you into a medical monstrosity, a living testament to the fact that sometimes the cure is infinitely worse than the disease. But throughout this process of physical decay, of accidents and diseases, there is one constant, one experience that will become the defining feature of your endless existence: pain. We tend to think of pain as a temporary state, a warning signal from the body that something is wrong. It is a message that we can eventually turn off, either by healing the injury or by dying. But for a quantum immortal, pain is not a temporary signal. It is a permanent broadcast. And you are the receiver that can never be unplugged. Let's look at the neurology. Pain is not in your broken leg or your cancerous organ. Pain is a complex signal processed and generated by your brain. It is pure information. And as we have established, information in a quantum universe is conserved. When your body is subjected to a horrific injury in a low probability survival event, the neural pathways that encode that agony are seared into your brain. In a normal life, the brain can eventually heal or be terminated, but your existence is not normal. You will be shunted into timelines where your brain, the seat of your consciousness, survives, even if the rest of your body is a wreck. This means you are forced into the timelines where the pain signal is also preserved. Imagine a burn victim surviving a fire that should have been fatal. Their survival is a 1 in a billion miracle. But the price is a body covered in third-degree burns and a nervous system that is screaming in agony. Your consciousness is forced into that timeline. You are forced to inhabit that pain. And because you cannot die, the pain does not end. It becomes the new baseline of your reality. Your mind might try to adapt. It might try to dissociate. But the signal is always there. This leads to a terrifying conclusion. The state of maximum, unendurable, physical agony is not just a possible future for a quantum immortal. It is a statistically probable one. The universe, in its quest to find a path for your survival, will eventually be forced to choose paths where your body is compromised in ways that generate constant, high-fidelity pain signals. The peace of silence is a mercy you will not be granted. You are condemned to listen to the static of your own suffering forever. So your body is a decaying prison. Your senses are locked in a loop of pain. But what about your mind? We have a name for the process of decay over time: entropy. The second law of thermodynamics states that in any closed system, entropy or disorder must always increase. This is the arrow of time. It is why buildings crumble, why stars burn out, and why your body ages. But this law does not just apply to physical systems. It applies to information systems as well. And your mind is an information system. This means you are subject to psychological entropy. Think of your memory. It is not a perfect digital recording. It is a messy biological process of storing and retrieving patterns. Over time, it decays. You forget things. You misremember. This is a form of increasing disorder. In a normal lifespan of 80 years, this is a manageable problem. But what happens over 1,000 years? 10,000? A million? Your mind is a hard drive with a finite capacity. It was not designed for eternity. After a few centuries, you would have accumulated so many memories that you would begin to overwrite the oldest, most important ones. The faces of your first family, the memory of your childhood, the very sense of your original identity, all would be lost to the noise. You would become a creature of pure, eternal present, with a jumbled, chaotic mess of a past that you can no longer navigate. This decay also applies to your personality. Your emotional state is a complex chemical balance. Over immense timescales, that balance would be impossible to maintain. You would experience forms of grief, boredom, and existential dread so profound that they would effectively burn out your neural circuits. Your ability to feel joy, love, or purpose would erode, ground down by the sheer, monotonous weight of endless time. You would not become a wise, all-knowing immortal. You would become a psychologically shattered being, an informational ghost haunted by the garbled remnants of a million forgotten lives. The arrow of time does not just destroy your body. It destroys the very person you are, leaving only the raw, empty observer behind. As your endless life continues, you will witness a constant, unchanging truth. Everyone else dies. Your friends, your family, your children, your grandchildren, they are all subject to the normal laws of probability. They will get sick and not recover. They will be in accidents and not walk away. They are not the central character in this story. You are. This leads to the ultimate psychological isolation, a state known as solipsism. Not as a philosophical idea, but as an observed, experimental fact. The universe, from your perspective, will begin to look like it was designed for you, and you alone. In the beginning, you would grieve. You would mourn the loss of your loved ones. But after centuries, after millennia, after you have attended 1,000 funerals, what happens to your capacity for grief? Empathy is based on a shared experience, a shared vulnerability. But you are not vulnerable. You are the one constant in a universe of fleeting, fragile beings. They are like mayflies, living and dying in a single day, while you, the unmoving rock, watch their brief, frantic lives play out. Over time, your connection to them would thin. They would become less like your peers and more like characters in a story, temporary figures passing through your eternal narrative. This is the solipsism trap. You become the only real person in your own universe. Everyone else is just a temporary pattern, a fleeting collection of atoms that appears for a while and then disappears. This would lead to a profound and terrifying loneliness, a sense of detachment so complete that it would border on psychosis. You would be the only observer left in a world of what might as well be philosophical zombies, complex biological machines that mimic life but lack the permanence that defines your existence. The horror is not just that you are alone. The horror is that your immortality actively proves to you, day after day, that you are the only thing that is real. You are the last observer, and the price of your endless sight is that you have no one left to share the view with. You might argue that technology will solve these problems, that future medicine will cure aging, repair any injury, and allow you to live in a state of perfect health forever. This is a common trope in science fiction, but it ignores the fundamental nature of the trap. Technology does not offer an escape. It only offers a more sophisticated and more horrifying kind of prison. Let's assume that humanity develops the technology for mind uploading, the ability to transfer your consciousness from your decaying biological brain into a perfect digital substrate, a computer that can run forever. This seems like a solution. You can escape the agony of your biological body and live as a pure intelligence in a virtual paradise. But what are you actually doing? You are not escaping the trap. You are simply trading a biological prison for a digital one. The underlying principle of quantum immortality still applies. The software of your mind still cannot be deleted. Now, you are running on a computer, and that computer is a physical object. It is subject to decay. Its servers can fail. Its power source can run out. It can be destroyed by a meteor strike. In each of these events, the universe will split, and your consciousness will be shunted into the improbable timeline where the hardware survives. Perhaps a 1 in a trillion power surge restarts the system at the last moment. Perhaps a single redundant backup server in a forgotten corner of the solar system is the only thing left of your civilization. You are still trapped. But now, your survival is dependent on the increasingly improbable survival of a machine. What happens when the stars themselves begin to die? When the energy sources that power your digital heaven run out? Your consciousness will be forced into the timeline where a single, sputtering Dyson sphere, running on the last dregs of a white dwarf's energy, is all that is left. You will not be living in a virtual paradise. You will be a ghost trapped in a dying machine, in a cold, dark, and empty universe. Technology does not give you control. It just raises the stakes. It makes your prison larger, colder, and infinitely more lonely. So we have now explored the long, slow horror of biological and technological decay. We have seen that a guarantee of survival is not a guarantee of health, sanity, or joy. The universe, in its relentless adherence to the laws of information conservation, will keep you conscious at any cost. And the cost is your body, your mind, and your connection to everyone you have ever known. You are not destined to become a god. You are destined to become a wreck, a ghost in a decaying machine, trapped in a state of ever-increasing agony and isolation. The promise of death as a final peace has been exposed as a lie. You will never get that peace. This journey through the horror of the physical has been brutal, but it has been based on one single unifying assumption. The assumption that throughout this entire process, the entity that is suffering is still, in some recognizable way, you. We have been talking about your pain, your body, your mind, but what if that is the final illusion? What if the same mechanism that copies your body into infinite branches also fractures the very concept of a singular identity? The problem is no longer just about the physical container of your consciousness. The problem is about the consciousness itself. If the universe is making 1 million copies of you every second, which one is the real you? If they all feel pain, who is the one that is actually suffering? We have explored the prison of the body. Now we must enter an even darker and more confusing labyrinth, the prison of the self. We must confront the terrifying possibility that you do not even exist. To understand why your identity is a fiction, we must start with a puzzle that has haunted philosophers for 2,000 years. It is known as the ship of Theseus. The story, as told by the Greek historian Plutarch, is this. The great Athenian hero, Theseus, had a ship. The people of Athens preserved this ship for centuries as a memorial. But over time, the wooden planks began to rot. To maintain the ship, they would replace each rotting plank with a new, identical one. Eventually, a point was reached where every single plank on the ship had been replaced. The question is this still the ship of Theseus? Or is it a completely new ship that just looks the same? Now, imagine the shipwright who was replacing the planks kept all the old rotten ones, and in his own shipyard, he reassembled them into their original configuration. Which ship is the real ship of Theseus? The one in the harbour, made of new materials, or the one in the shipyard, made of the original decaying wood? This is the paradox of identity. What makes something itself? Is it the pattern, the structure, or is it the physical material? For centuries, this was just a philosophical game. But in the many worlds interpretation, this is no longer a game. It is the literal, physical reality of your existence. Every time the universe splits, a perfect copy of you is made. At the moment of the split, the two versions are identical, down to the last atom. They share the same memories, the same thoughts, the same physical body. But from that moment on, they begin to diverge. One version of you turns left, the other turns right. One version drinks coffee, the other drinks tea. Each new experience, each new quantum measurement adds a new, unique plank to the ship of your identity. After a day, the two versions are slightly different. After a year, they are noticeably different. After a decade, they might be completely different people, shaped by a decade of different experiences. So, which one is the real you? The one who turned left? The one who turned right? The answer that quantum mechanics provides is brutal and unequivocal. They all are. There is no original. There is no prime timeline. You are not a single, continuous entity moving through time. You are a constantly branching, ever-diverging swarm of consciousnesses, each one convinced that it is the one true self. The singular I that you feel in your head is an illusion. You are not a person. You are a population. So you are not a single entity. You are a swarm, a collective, an ever-expanding cloud of parallel selves spreading out through the infinite branches of the Hilbert space. What does this mean for your experience of the world? It means that your personal subjective reality is an infinitesimally small slice of the total reality of your existence. Right now, you are sitting here, watching this video. You might be comfortable, you might be safe, but what about the other yous? At this exact moment, there is a version of you dying in a hospital bed from a cancer you never developed. There is a version of you grieving the loss of a child who, in your timeline, is sleeping safely in their room. There is a version of you trapped in a burning building. A version of you being tortured in a war you never had to fight. A version of you who is homeless, starving, and freezing on the street. These are not hypothetical scenarios. If the physics is correct, these are real physical events happening to real, physical versions of your own consciousness, right now. This reframes the concept of empathy. We are taught to feel empathy for others. But can you feel empathy for yourself? Can you comprehend the fact that the total sum of your existence, across all branches of reality, is a landscape of unimaginable suffering? The tiny sliver of peace and safety that you are experiencing right now is an anomaly, a statistical outlier in the sea of your own pain. You are the one lucky member of the swarm who happened to find a scrap of food, while the rest of the hive is starving. The walls of decoherence prevent you from hearing their screams, but they are there. The total you is not a happy, successful person who has had a few close calls. The total you is a tragic figure whose existence is defined by a near infinite amount of suffering. And the small comfort of your current life is paid for by the agony of a trillion other selves you can never know. You might argue that if you cannot see these other selves, if you cannot feel their pain, then they are not truly you. You might say that the only self that matters is the one you are experiencing right now, in this branch. This is a tempting and a logical argument. It is a psychological defense mechanism against the crushing weight of the swarm. And it is a defense mechanism that is built into the physics of the universe itself. The process that creates the split, quantum decoherence, is also the process that ensures your absolute total isolation. As we established, when the universe splits, the two branches of the wave function become entangled with two different, mutually exclusive versions of the environment. The information leaks out and the two worlds can no longer interact. They become orthogonal, perpendicular to each other in the infinite dimensional Hilbert space. This is not a wall made of bricks. It is a wall made of mathematics. It is a fundamental barrier to communication. The you in the other branch is not on another planet. He is in the same room as you, occupying the same space, but his particles are vibrating in a different phase. You pass through him like a ghost, completely unaware of his existence. This is the ultimate form of isolation. You are surrounded by an infinite number of your own selves, an entire city of yous living out every possible permutation of your life, but you can never speak to them. You can never learn from their mistakes. You can never comfort them in their pain. You are utterly and completely alone, in the most crowded room in existence. This solves the paradox of why we feel like a single I. We feel singular because the walls of our personal reality are perfectly soundproof and perfectly opaque. But the knowledge that those other rooms exist, and that they are filled with the screams of your other selves, is a kind of psychological torture. You are the warden of an infinite prison, and you are also every single inmate, each one locked in a solitary confinement cell, unaware of the others. So you are a swarm of isolated selves. But at the moment of the split, at least they are all you. They share your memories, your personality, your moral compass. But what happens over time? What happens after 10 years of divergent experiences? 20 years? 50? The foundation of our identity, our sense of a consistent character, is built upon the unbroken chain of our memories and choices. But in a branching universe, that chain is broken every single picosecond. This leads to the final and perhaps most terrifying consequence of the many worlds theory, the death of your character. Imagine a split that happens to you today. In one branch, you get a promotion at work. You become successful, happy, and confident. In the other branch, you are fired. You fall into a depression, develop a drinking problem, and end up estranged from your family. 50 years from now, these two versions of you would be completely different people. They would have different memories, different values, different personalities. They might not even recognize each other. So which one is the real you, the successful one, the broken one? The physics says they both are. The concept of a single enduring character is an illusion. This shatters our most deeply held notions of morality and responsibility. You might be a good person in this timeline. You might be kind, generous, and loving. But at this very moment, there is a branch of reality where a different set of circumstances led you down a different path. A path that ended in you becoming a murderer. A monster. You cannot comfort yourself with the idea that I would never do that. Because in another world, you already did. The potential for absolute evil is not a hypothetical part of your personality. It is a physical, living reality in another branch. You are not one person. You are every possible version of yourself. You are the saint and the sinner, the hero and the villain, the victim and the perpetrator. The singular identity you cling to is just one mask worn by an infinite actor. And eventually, you are forced to ask the question, if you are everyone, are you anyone at all? So your identity is not singular. It is a branching, diverging swarm. You are both the saint and the sinner, the hero and the villain. The knowledge of this shatters the foundation of your character, but it also has a more subtle and perhaps more insidious effect on your day-to-day perception of the world. As you begin to truly internalize the reality of the split, your own life can start to feel less and less real. You are no longer the author of your story. You are just one of infinite readers, following one of infinite paths. This can lead to a profound sense of detachment, a psychological state known as derealization. It is the feeling that the world around you is not real, that you are living in a dream or a movie. In a classical, single timeline universe, your choices have weight. They have consequences. The path you choose is the only path. This gives your life a sense of narrative gravity. But in a branching universe, every choice you make is also a choice you don't make. The moment you choose to turn left, another version of you chooses to turn right. Every decision is instantly rendered meaningless because all possible decisions are being played out simultaneously. Why agonize over a difficult moral choice if you know that in another branch, you are making the opposite choice with equal reality? Why feel pride in your accomplishments if another version of you is simultaneously experiencing abject failure? Your life begins to feel like a video game where you are not the player, but a passive observer watching a let's play video of every possible playthrough at once. The sense of agency, of being in control of your own destiny, evaporates. You are a ghost, a phantom, drifting through a fog of infinite possibilities. This is not just a philosophical navel-gazing, it is a recognized psychological condition. People who experience chronic derealization report feeling emotionally numb, disconnected from their own bodies, and as if they are separated from the world by a pane of glass. The many worlds interpretation suggests that this is not a pathology. It is the correct and rational perception of the true nature of reality. The feeling of unreality is a symptom of you waking up to the fact that your singular life is, in fact, an illusion. This sense of detachment eventually leads to the ultimate form of psychological isolation. We have established that you are surrounded by an infinite number of your own selves, but you can never communicate with them. But what about the other people in your world? Your friends, your family, the strangers you pass on the street? You assume they are like you, conscious beings on their own branching, immortal journey. But the logic of quantum immortality, when pushed to its final conclusion, suggests a darker and far more lonely reality. From your subjective perspective, you are the only person in the universe who is guaranteed to survive. This is the solipsism trap. Think about it from your point of view. You are the protagonist of this story. The laws of quantum mechanics are arranged in such a way as to ensure your personal, subjective continuity no matter what. But those laws do not apply to anyone else. Your spouse, your child, your best friend, they are not the observer at the center of your universe. You are. So when you are in a car crash together, the universe splits. The timeline is forced to follow a path where your consciousness survives. But it is under no obligation to ensure the survival of your passengers. So what do you experience? You wake up in the hospital and the doctor tells you, you are the sole survivor. It's a miracle. You are forced to live in the timeline where you had to bury your entire family. You grieve. You move on. A decade later, you're on a plane with your new family. The engine explodes. The plane goes down. In 99.999% of branches, everyone on board dies. But your consciousness is forced into the 1 in a billion branch where you are, once again, the sole survivor, found alive in the wreckage. This will happen over and over again. Everyone you ever love will eventually be killed by the statistics of your own survival. You are a walking, talking statistical anomaly. A black hole of probability that consumes the lives of everyone who gets too close to you. You are not just destined to be alone. You are destined to be the cause of your own loneliness. What does this endless parade of loss do to a human mind? In the beginning, you would grieve. The pain would be unbearable. But what happens after you have attended 1,000 funerals? After you have watched every person you have ever known die over and over again in 1,000 different ways? The human capacity for grief is not infinite. Empathy, our ability to feel the pain of others, is based on a sense of shared vulnerability, a shared mortality. But you are not mortal. You are the one constant in a universe of fleeting, fragile beings. And this makes your relationship with them fundamentally different. Over immense timescales, the people around you would cease to be your peers. They would become something else, something temporary. They would be like mayflies, living and dying in a single day, while you, the unmoving rock, watch their brief, frantic lives play out. Your emotional connection would thin. You would still understand, intellectually, that they are suffering, but you would no longer be able to feel it. It would be like watching a sad movie a million times. The first time, you cry. The millionth time, you're just watching the images on the screen. This is the final stage of the solipsism trap, the death of empathy. You would inevitably evolve into a cold, detached observer, a being who sees love and loss and joy and pain not as real experiences, but as interesting data points in the endless flow of your own existence. You would become a scientist studying a colony of ants, fascinated by their complex social structures, but incapable of feeling a genuine connection to any individual ant. The price of your immortality is your humanity. You survive, but the person you were, the person who was capable of love and connection, dies a slow, cold death, leaving only a hollow, calculating observer in its place. So your character is dead. Your empathy is dead. Your connection to others is dead. What is left? What is the you that continues to exist? The answer is a chilling reduction of your entire being to a single, abstract concept. Your identity becomes redundant. You are no longer a person. You are a mathematical point. In physics, the state of a system is described by its coordinates in an abstract space. For quantum mechanics, this is the infinite dimensional Hilbert space. Every possible state of the universe is a point in this space. You, in this formalism, are not your name, or your memories, or your personality. You are a coordinate, a specific vector that represents the state of the 86 billion neurons in your brain. When the universe splits, that vector is copied and evolves along two different paths. The story of your life is just the trajectory of that point through an infinite mathematical landscape. This is the ultimate dehumanization. It strips away every layer of what we consider to be our self and leaves only the raw, abstract data. Your hopes, your fears, your dreams, your love for your children, all of it is reduced to a set of numbers, a configuration of particles. In a universe where there are an infinite number of these points, each one representing a version of you, what makes your specific point special? Nothing. It is just one data point in an infinite set. The concept of a unique, precious self is a comforting illusion that is not supported by the math. You are not a person. You are a location. And that location is about to be evicted from the only home it has ever known. We have now reached the absolute nadir of personal identity. You are not a single person, but an infinite swarm. You are not a character, but a collection of every possible character. You are not a loving human, but a cold, detached observer. And you are not a self, but a mathematical point. The I that you started this journey with has been completely deconstructed, dissolved into the cold, impersonal machinery of the cosmos. The prison of the self has been revealed to be an empty room. This is a state of absolute perfect loneliness. You are the only immortal being in a universe of mortals. You are the only constant in a universe of change. You have been proven by the very laws of your own survival to be utterly and completely alone. But there is one final anchor that we have been clinging to. The universe itself, the stars, the galaxies, the very fabric of space-time. We have assumed that while you are a prisoner, at least the prison itself is eternal. But what if it is not? What if the prison itself is designed to decay? What happens to the last immortal observer when the universe itself begins to die? We have explored the horror of biology and the horror of identity. Now, we must face the final and the largest of all horrors, the horror of cosmology. So you have survived your own biology. You have survived your own psychology. You have watched everyone you have ever known turn to dust. You are the last observer, a lone immortal mind in an aging cosmos. For a time, your prison is at least well lit. You are surrounded by the brilliant, majestic fire of the stars. But the stars are not eternal. They are finite machines, and they are running out of fuel. This brings us to the timescale of cosmology, a scale so vast it makes the lifespan of a human feel like a single picosecond. We are currently living in the Stelliferous era, the age of stars. It is a brief, glorious, and fleeting moment of light in the history of the universe, and it is coming to an end. Every star in the sky, including our own sun, is a thermonuclear reactor. It fuses hydrogen into helium, releasing a colossal amount of energy in the process. But the supply of hydrogen is finite. In about 5 billion years, the sun will exhaust the fuel in its core. It will swell into a red giant, incinerating the inner planets, including Earth. It will then collapse into a cold, dense cinder known as a white dwarf. Your consciousness, in order to survive this, will have been forced to find a new home, perhaps in a digital substrate orbiting a more stable, long-lived red dwarf star. But this is only a temporary reprieve. One by one, over a timescale of 100 trillion years, every star in the universe will burn out. The lights will go out. The universe will then enter what physicists call the degenerate era. It will be a cold, dark, and profoundly empty place. The only objects left will be the corpses of stars, white dwarfs, neutron stars, and black holes, all drifting silently through an expanding, near-perfect vacuum. The age of light and heat will be over. The universe will become a cosmic graveyard, populated only by the ghosts of what once was. There will be no new stars. There will be no new planets. The machinery of cosmic creation will have ground to a permanent halt, and you, the immortal observer, will be there to witness it. You will be floating in an ocean of absolute darkness, clinging to the last dying embers of a forgotten fire. In this cold, dark graveyard of the degenerate era, the only remaining sources of energy will be the black holes. But even they are not eternal. In 1974, the physicist Stephen Hawking made a discovery that shook the foundations of cosmology. He proved mathematically that black holes are not truly black. They emit a faint, almost undetectable glow of thermal radiation, a phenomenon now known as Hawking radiation. This means that black holes are slowly, incredibly slowly, losing mass. They are evaporating. The process is so slow that it is meaningless on a human timescale. A solar mass black hole would take 10 to the power of 67 years to evaporate. The supermassive black holes at the centers of galaxies, with masses billions of times that of our sun, will take far longer. An almost unimaginable 10 to the power of 100 years, a number known as a googol. But in the context of eternity, even a googol is a finite number. This means that even the most massive, most stable structures in the cosmos are temporary. They too are destined to decay. As the last black holes evaporate in a final, weak flash of gamma rays, the universe will enter its next and penultimate phase. The black hole era gives way to the dark era. There will be nothing left but a thin, cold, and ever-expanding soup of photons, neutrinos, and a few stray subatomic particles. The temperature of the universe will approach absolute zero. All organized matter, every star, every planet, every atom will have decayed into its constituent parts. This is the heat death of the universe. It is the state of maximum entropy, of maximum disorder. It is not a theory. It is the inevitable thermodynamic endpoint of the reality we live in. It is the final silence, but it is still not the end for you. So the universe is a cold, dark, and empty soup of particles, drifting apart in an endless void. There is no structure, there is no energy, there is no life. Time itself has lost all meaning because nothing ever happens. This is the state of heat death. But is it truly dead? In the 19th century, the physicist Ludwig Boltzmann, one of the founders of statistical mechanics, confronted a terrifying paradox. In a system at maximum entropy, random fluctuations can and must still occur. In this thin, chaotic soup of the far future, particles will still be moving. And given an infinite amount of time, a truly infinite amount of time, anything that is not forbidden by the laws of physics is not just possible, it is inevitable. It is statistically inevitable that, by pure random chance, a group of particles will spontaneously fluctuate into an ordered, complex state. Most of these fluctuations will be small, but eventually, a fluctuation will occur that is large enough to assemble a fully formed, functioning human brain, complete with a full set of false memories of a life that was never lived. This hypothetical entity is known as a Boltzmann brain. This is one of the most disturbing ideas in all of science. It suggests that in the long run, the most common type of observer in the universe is not a biological being that evolved on a planet, but a disembodied, momentary consciousness that has fluctuated out of the void. And this leads to a horrifying statistical argument. What is more likely? That the entire, vast, low-entropy universe, with its billions of galaxies and 13.8 billion years of consistent history, fluctuated into existence? Or that just your brain, with the false memory of that universe, did? The math is brutal. The second option is exponentially more likely. Statistically, you are almost certainly a Boltzmann brain, a momentary flicker of awareness in a dead, empty cosmos, hallucinating this entire reality. But for you, the quantum immortal, the situation is even worse. You are not a momentary flicker. You are the permanent observer, which means you are condemned to witness this process forever. So you are a disembodied consciousness, a pattern of information, floating in the eternal featureless void of the heat death. You have watched the stars die. You have watched the black holes evaporate. You have watched matter itself dissolve. And now, you are alone in the dark. Is this the end? No. There is one final, and perhaps the most cruel, law of physics left to confront. It is a theorem from the 19th century, formulated by the French mathematician Henri Poincare. It is called the Poincare recurrence theorem, and it is the mathematical formula for an eternal hell. The theorem states that any closed system, after a long enough period of time, will eventually return to a state arbitrarily close to its initial state. In simple terms, if you wait long enough, the random shuffling of particles will eventually reproduce the exact state of the universe at a previous moment in time. The monkeys on the typewriters will not just write Shakespeare, they will write the entire history of the cosmos, over and over again. The timescale for a full Poincare recurrence of our observable universe is a number so large it makes a Google look like 0. It is a 10, raised to the power of a 10, raised to the power of a 10, raised to the power of 120. It is a number that cannot be written down, but it is a finite number. What does this mean for you? It means that the heat death is not the end. It is just an intermission. If you wait long enough, the random fluctuations in the void will not just create a random brain. They will create a perfect copy of our entire universe. A new Big Bang will occur. The stars will reignite. The Earth will reform, evolution will run its course again, and a perfect copy of you will be born. You will live this exact same life, make the same mistakes, feel the same pain, and die the same deaths in the same branches. And then the universe will die again, and the cycle will repeat, forever. This is the concept of eternal return, an idea that terrified the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. It is not a reincarnation into a new life. It is a condemnation to repeat the same life with no memory of the previous cycles, in a cosmic loop that can never be broken. So we have reached the end of time, only to find that there is no end. You are trapped in a cosmic, recursive loop. You are a character in a story that is destined to be reread, line by line, an infinite number of times. The prison is not just your body. It is not just your mind. It is not just the universe. The prison is time itself. You are a prisoner of eternity, and the walls of your cell are the laws of physics. There is no escape. There is no relief. There is no non-existence. There is only the endless, meaningless, and agonizing repetition of the same brief flicker of awareness, over and over again. This is the final, absolute truth of your condition. It is the logical endpoint of the journey we began with a simple car crash. The universe is a perfect, inescapable trap. It is a machine designed to produce an immortal observer, and then torture that observer with the spectacle of its own infinite, pointless existence. Confronted with this truth, there are only two possible responses. The first is despair. A surrender to the crushing cosmic horror of it all. A passive acceptance of your role as a victim. But there is another option. What if the only way to be free in a prison is not to escape, but to embrace the sentence? What if the only rational response to an absurd universe is an act of absurd rebellion? We have laid out the full anatomy of the trap. Now, in our final moments, we must ask the most important question of all. What do we do now? So the trap is perfect. The sentence is eternal. The laws of physics are the bars of your cage. Faced with this absolute unblinking certainty of a meaningless, repetitive existence, the logical human response is despair, a complete and total surrender to the cosmic horror. But it is at this exact point, at the absolute bottom of the abyss, that a different kind of logic can emerge. A logic not of physics, but of philosophy. If the game is rigged and the outcome is guaranteed, then the only thing that matters is how you choose to play. This is the philosophy of absurdism, and it is the final and only weapon you have against the void. The 20th century philosopher Albert Camus, in his most famous essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, provides the blueprint for this rebellion. Sisyphus is a figure from Greek mythology who was condemned by the gods to a futile and hopeless punishment. He was forced to roll a massive boulder up a hill, only to watch it roll back down every time he reached the top. He was sentenced to repeat this useless labor for all eternity. This is the perfect metaphor for the human condition in a universe governed by entropy and eternal recurrence. We build civilizations, and they crumble. We seek knowledge, and it is erased. We live our lives, only to have them repeated without memory. Every action is ultimately rendered meaningless by the boulder rolling back down the hill. Camus acknowledges the profound misery of this situation. He calls Sisyphus the absurd hero. But he concludes his essay with a shocking and revolutionary sentence. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Why? How can a being trapped in a state of eternal, pointless suffering be happy? Because Camus argues, the moment Sisyphus becomes conscious of his condition, the moment he looks at the boulder, understands the futility of his task, and decides to push it anyway, he becomes superior to his fate. He is no longer a tragic victim. He is a rebel. His happiness is not in the hope of reaching the summit. His happiness is in the act of the struggle itself. It is a happiness born of pure, defiant scorn for the gods who trapped him. This is the final shift in perspective that is available to you. You are Sisyphus. The universe is the hill, and the laws of physics are the boulder. You cannot change the rules. You cannot stop the boulder from rolling, but you can change your relationship to it. You can recognize that the meaning of your existence is not something that is given to you by the universe. The universe is a blind, mindless machine. It has no meaning to give. Meaning is something that you, the conscious observer, create. And you create it through the act of defiance. The lack of inherent meaning in the cosmos is not a defect. It is a blank canvas. Think about the alternative. Imagine if the universe did have a clear, objective purpose. Imagine if you were created by some cosmic entity to fulfill a specific function. In that universe, you would be a tool, a slave to a destiny you did not choose. But in a universe that is a chaotic, accidental byproduct of quantum fluctuations, you are free. You are not a cog in a machine. You are the only part of the machine that has woken up. The physicist John Archibald Wheeler a student of Niels Bohr and a colleague of Einstein, proposed a concept he called the participatory anthropic principle. He argued that the universe does not even exist in a definite state until it is observed. He famously coined the phrase "it from bit," suggesting that every particle, every field of force, and the fabric of space-time itself derives its existence from the answers to yes or no questions posed by conscious observers. You are not just a passive witness to the cosmos. Your act of observation is what makes it real. Without you, the universe is just a cloud of unrealized probability. A movie playing in an empty theater. You are the audience, the projector, and the screen, all at once. This gives you a strange and terrible power. The universe may have trapped you, but it is a prisoner of your gaze. So we are the anomaly, the glitch, the ghost in the machine that woke up and realized it was in a machine. This realization does not just give us the option of defiance, it gives us a responsibility, a mandate. We have discussed the rare Earth hypothesis and the Great Filter, the immense chain of improbable events that had to occur for a complex technological civilization to arise. We have discussed the statistical certainty that you are a Boltzmann brain. But what if we are not? What if this vast, complex universe is real? What if we are the product of 13.8 billion years of unbroken evolutionary success? If that is the case, then our existence is the most precious and the most fragile thing in the entire cosmos. We are the universe's only way of knowing itself. A sunset is not beautiful unless there is an eye to see it and a mind to interpret the photons. The laws of physics are not elegant unless there is a consciousness to comprehend the mathematics. Without an observer, the universe is just a set of equations running in the dark. We are the custodians of the light. We are the meaning makers in a meaningless world. If we allow ourselves to be destroyed, not by a stray asteroid or a supernova, but by our own despair, by our own tribal conflicts, by our own short-sightedness, we are not just ending our own story. We are blinding the universe. We are lobotomizing the cosmos. We are allowing the entire, grand, improbable enterprise of existence to slip back into a state of mindless, unconscious coma. This adds a layer of profound duty to our survival. We are carrying a candle through a hurricane. The flame is flickering. The winds of entropy and our own worst instincts are trying to blow it out. But the fact that it is still lit is a miracle. And our job is not to curse the storm. Our job is to shield the flame. So we are brought back to the present, to this moment, to the choice that lies before us. We have journeyed to the end of time and back. We have seen the perfect nature of the trap. We have stared into the abyss of eternal recurrence and the heat death of the universe. And now, armed with this terrifying knowledge, what do? We are standing at the most critical juncture in the history of our species. We are the first generation to understand the true scale of the cosmic prison, and we are likely the last generation that will have the chance to decide how we live inside it. The choice is not between hope and despair. Hope is an irrational emotion based on incomplete data. We have the data. The data is clear. The trap is real. The choice is between two forms of action. Option A is surrender. We can continue to live as if our actions do not matter. We can continue to fight our petty wars, burn our precious resources, and distract ourselves with trivialities, all while waiting for the inevitable decay to consume us. This is the path of the passive victim, the path of Sisyphus before he woke up. Option B is defiance. We can accept the terrifying reality of our position. We can accept that we are fragile, that we are alone, and that the universe is hostile to our existence. And we can choose to fight back. Not because we expect to win, but because the act of fighting is what gives our existence meaning. We can become a species that works together to shield the flame. We can become quiet. We can become smart. And we can become multiplanetary, not to conquer the galaxy, but to create backups of the only data that matters: consciousness itself. The silence of the night sky is not a rejection. It is a challenge. The universe is a sphinx, and it has given us a riddle, and the riddle is our own existence. For millennia, we have looked up at the stars and asked, are we alone? We have been asking the wrong question. The knowledge of quantum immortality forces us to ask a new and far more important question. Not, are we alone? But, what is our duty if we are? You are the universe waking up. You are the texts that refuse to burn. You are the observer who can never close their eyes. The horror of your condition is also the source of your greatest strength. It is the perfect, unyielding motivation to make this one, single, endlessly repeating life matter, to infuse it with as much meaning and compassion and discovery as possible. You are the last observer. The film will never end. The screen will never go black. So you have to decide what kind of movie you want to watch. The choice is yours, forever.